Welcome to the Thesis Proposal Canvas. My name is Roger Hage, and I will show you in less than 15 minutes how to use this tool in order to build your own thesis proposals or exposés. So this is an Excel sheet, and you have several cells where you can enter information. The first one is the title, so you enter the title of your thesis. You enter your name, and you enter the name of your advisor or of your coach. Then you start entering the cells, and we will go from left to right and from top to down. So first, top to down. So we start with the population. Whenever you hover over a cell with your mouse, you will get a help text explaining to you what is expected to be entered here. So here we enter the population of interest. I will use here, Austrian small medium enterprises. Then you enter the problem this population has, and that could be a challenge, this could be an aspiration, this could be an opportunity, or some problems which are unsolved. So you enter here a problem. Then you narrow down the population and the problem to a certain sub-area of interest, because there are a lot of topics you can work on, but you need to narrow it down to a sub-area of interest. And that's exactly that sub-area of interest you're focusing on, that you want to search the literature about. Yeah, so you use keywords and advanced search function in the libraries based on this sub-area of interest. Now we go up and to the right, and the second column is very much related to the literature research, the preliminary literature search you have done. So probably during your search and reading of the literature, you have stumbled upon some theories, some models, some frameworks, etc., which might be interesting for your study as well. So you write them down here. Yeah. Then in the next cell, you summarize the 3 to 5 findings from your literature research, the preliminary one which you're using for this proposal. You can enter several lines in the same cell by using Alt-Enter key. I'll show you later on where you get these findings from, or where you have documented them in the same tool. But for the reader of the canvas, it's important to see what were your findings from your preliminary literature search. The next cell is about the knowledge gap. So is there a value of doing a study or doing a research? It is only if there is something missing and you want to add value to it. So here you are showing what is the knowledge gap which you are filling with your research. This is very important also to prove the academic and the practical relevance of your thesis. So you enter here your research gap, whatever. The next cell is one of the most important one, and that's the research question, and that's at the heart of your canvas. It's in the middle, it's the biggest one, and this is one of the most important parts which you are defining in your thesis proposal. So you have to have a research question which is not too broad but not too narrow. It has to be in between. But what is more important is that it has to be formulated in such a way that you can measure it or you can answer it during your research. It is good practice to highlight the keywords in your research question in bold and capital letters and even in red color, and your active words in italic and underline. We will see a few examples later on in the sample canvas example. Now, if you're doing a deductive approach or following a deductive approach and probably a quantitative approach, you might have some hypothesis, maybe not at the beginning, maybe later on, so you can update this canvas later on as well. If you do have already hypothesis, you can enter here the hypothesis, up to 3, you mention them, you formulate them, and it's up to you to answer them, to reject them or to approve them during your research. Now again, if applicable, and that means if you're doing a quantitative approach, then you might have concepts and variables which you would like to measure and probably prove that there are some associations, relations, correlations, causations, and you use letters to denote these variables, which you define somewhere else, probably in additional comments, and with arrows or double arrows to show correlations or relations and directions. So this is, in a very simplified form, your conceptual model. Then we have the method, and here you have drop-down lists. The first cell you will select your primary research types. You can have either an exploratory, a descriptive, explanatory, correlational, or causal. In my case, I will have a descriptive one. I'm following a descriptive approach. Then the research design is either quantitative or qualitative or a mixed method. I'm using a quantitative in my case. The next cell is about which criteria do you use to select the frame of your sample. Yeah? In my case, I will be selecting HR executives in Austrian small medium enterprises, and within that frame I will be doing some sampling technique, which I will be showing you later. First, let me define the measurement method. I have a lot of quantitative and a lot of qualitative measuring instruments. I will be using a quantitative survey questionnaire. And now the sampling technique. You can have probability sampling methods and non-probability sampling methods. I will be using a probability sampling method, the stratified random method. In the next cell, you define your sample size. Now for qualitative approach, you will have very small samples, and you will increase your samples during your research and your study, and you increase them so long until you get saturation. That means that you don't get any new emergent information. In my case, I have a quantitative method. By default, there's the number 1 because you need at least a sample to have an empirical study. So I will be entering here, let's say 150. Automatically, it will calculate the standard error, which I will get. That means if I do an inference towards the population using proportions, they will be plus minus 8%. Let me see if I change the sample size to 400, it should change to 5%. Then it will be plus minus 5%. But in my case, let's say it's 100, even less than 150, then it will be plus minus 30. You should be aware of what errors are implied when you do your statistical inferences. The next cell, we go up and to the right, is the structure of your document. So there's nothing to enter here, and even if I try to enter anything here, it's not possible. It's a protected cell, but it tells me link to your outline, and I have here another sheet called outline, fill in. Here I can enter the titles of my chapters, like introduction, and how many pages I intend to have in this chapter, and then the name of chapter 2 and the number of pages I intend to have, chapter 3, chapter 4, chapter 5, etc. And you see it will make the sum automatically of the intended pages you're planning to write, and red means that it is still too little. The threshold is very much defined by, if we go back to the canvas, the first page, and we go down, We have here master thesis, that's selected by default, but you can change it to academic paper, bachelor thesis, or PhD thesis, and then it will have an influence on the total number of pages or the minimum number of pages required. Now let's go back to the canvas. The next thing to fill in is the time plan. You enter the dates you plan to submit the proposal, for example, March 18, so 3 letters for the month and 2 digits for the day. And these are only the key milestones. For example, the unbound thesis, you plan to submit it on June 15, and you enter all the other dates so they are apparent on a single page of your canvas. So you have an overview. The last cell to enter are the references, and you see I cannot enter anything here. The references are populated automatically, and you have to go to the preliminary, your bibliography. So there's a sheet called bibliography. So here you enter the 10 references you are using in your proposal. The authors, the year, the title. Let me take an example. Then the year of publication, the title, the publication journal, so journal of advertisement, the number, the pages, the DOI as a hyperlink if available, and that's important, you select the source of your reference. Where did it come from? And that's the quality, either a peer-reviewed journal, a relevant journal, a conference proceeding, a textbook, a book, a trade magazine or report, or a website. In this case, it's a peer-reviewed journal. And then the article was referring to which geographic location. Was it Europe? Was it US? Was it a certain country, a certain city, or global? Did they have a research question? What was their research question? You enter the theories and models and frameworks they used, which might be relevant to your work as well. Which methodology and design did they use? Was it qualitative, quantitative? Which instruments did they use? Yeah, this might give you a hint how to solve your design. And did they mention any limitations and recommendations for future research? That would be very interesting for you. Give you some ideas on the research gap, so you can formulate a research question which would be something new and adding to the body of knowledge. And the last thing are the key findings. So when reading this article, what were your key findings? So when you have a lot of key findings, then it's much easier for you to fill in here the preliminary research literature findings here. Okay, let's go back to the bibliography. So let me just take a few other examples. So the top 5 will be shown on the first page of your canvas. So let me take here another example, and the publication was a conference, the ISCON tour, and this was a conference proceedings. The next one was, for example, a textbook I was using. Another one was just a trade magazine, and the last one was a website because the medium was the internet. So you see automatically these 5 are now populated in my summary, and they are giving scores 5, 4, 3, 1, 0. You see those who have scores less than 2 will be in red, showing you that the quality of these sources is not very good, but on the average you have a quality better than 2.5, so it is in black. If not, this would be, if you have a lot of web sources, the average will be so low that it will become also in red color, meaning that you have to improve the quality of your references. So we have filled in the whole canvas. Now to show you, now there are some additional comments which you can enter here. And there's additional reading, which is a read-only site with very valuable links for you, especially as a student. And then there's a sample canvas, as I mentioned before, to show you an example how a canvas which is already filled in could look like. Coming back to the research question, here you see very clearly what impact does alcoholism have on marital relations. So you are measuring impact, you need to define alcoholism, and you need to define marital relations. And here you have several research questions, but you could also mention the sub-questions here. Here you have how does it affect children's lives? So you see affect is an active verb, children's life is a keyword. What are the effects? Now effects is a keyword here, which you are measuring on the family's finances. You need to define the family's finances. Yeah. So you see here very clearly how on one page you see the population, the problem, sub-area of interest, the theories which were used or the models, some findings of the preliminary literature search, the knowledge gap, the key, the research questions, some hypotheses which were raised, your method, the time plan, and the references. So as mentioned, this is a beta version. So if you have any feedback, I would be more than happy if you send it back to me to this email address, roger.hage@fh-krems.ac.at. And if you have valuable contributions, I would be more than happy to add you to this list under the credits. Thank you very much and good luck.